You can join college programs right now by joining LandryFootball.com. College recruiting, draft, coaching searches all year round. Lots of free information. Don't forget Tuesday and Thursday, the great podcast. The membership package is right there. Less than a magazine subscription. You can get the access to an NFL college football-style scouting department. You get those special discount packages at LandryFootball.com today. Tell us where you heard about it right here on The Game on Tide 102.9, and you can receive a very special discount. It's that simple. If you like football, you are going to love LandryFootball.com. And with that, let's welcome in Chris Landry. Chris, I hope you're having a great Wednesday afternoon. Welcome into The Game in Tuscaloosa. I
am doing well. Great to be with you. Happy Thanksgiving to you and Marquise and all of your fine listeners.
Thank you. Big schedule for tomorrow. I mean, what's on the menu?
Well, it's football for me, so it's kind of like almost like 4 Saturdays in a row. I guess really tomorrow is more NFL oriented. We've got the Egg Bowl tomorrow night, but it's football tomorrow. And basically Friday is like a mini college Saturday, and the Saturday is the normal college football Saturday, and then Sunday, of course, the NFL. So I think it's the best week of the year for football people. So that's what's on the schedule for me. So I guess from that respect, it's pretty normal. But to have 4 days of football is obviously great.
I want to go back because the way that you break down film, I'm just curious if you saw anything in the Mercer game that maybe convinced you of Alabama maybe cleaning up some things. What did you see on tape?
Well, I saw certainly, obviously, you have to ignore the complete dominance level of the talent level, but what I did see is a little bit more comfort level in being able to make calls and make checks and getting guys in the right position. So I think that just the general experience, to be quite honest with you, I'm not so sure that, when I say this tongue-in-cheek because they're so banged up now you wouldn't want to do this, but I'm not so sure that it wouldn't have been better to have a more of a team scrimmage. Playing playing against one of yourselves in practice in a scrimmage would have been more beneficial than who they played. But situationally, in the game situations and between snaps and all the adjustments, I definitely saw more of a comfort level of what to do. But the thing about it is you have to kind of ignore the result, because the result at times, even when things were not done correctly, it was just overwhelming in terms of the talent level. But, I think that it was nothing more than a glorified practice, maybe not even a good practice in that respect, but you got some work done. I think the biggest thing that I'm waiting to see, and we really don't have the answer, and I think, we'll know a little bit more probably by Friday to how some of these guys, what can they give them? Who hasn't, the guys that haven't been medically cleared, Lewis and Wilson and Miller, what can they give them anything? I think we'll probably know by Friday whether they can give anything or not. So that to me is going to be the pivotal part, because they're playing a team that obviously comes in playing very well, playing with a lot of confidence, and listen, physically can match up and play with anybody in the country, including Alabama. And so I think it's going to come down to how well they're able to defend this running attack of Auburn. And I think that you look at Alabama, and all year long, you're giving up 60 yards rushing a game, and then obviously there's a completely different dynamic against Mississippi State, where they're giving up a lot more yards for obvious reasons. How are they able to overcome that and get enough healthy bodies and enough time to prepare? I think that they're probably going to have to play more numbers in the box, and then how is that going to affect them in coverage? And so I think that's going to be real pivotal. In fact, I think the key in this game, if you want to watch out there and look for something, look and see who can best defend the run in base sets and who has to maybe put an extra guy in the box to defend the run, and how that's going to affect them in coverage. That's going to be a real key, and who can take advantage of that. That to me is going to be a big key, is who's going to win this game.
Let me ask you about the Auburn defense. Is there a part there that's vulnerable? Do you see anything that you can attack?
They're really good. I mean, their defensive line is good and it's deep. I think you can attack their linebackers in coverage. I think that if you can get off press coverage, you can get the receivers deep if you can protect well enough to allow the deep route. And so I think that, let's talked a little bit last week, getting Jalen Hurts outside the pocket a little bit and getting a couple of deep routes. I think you can beat them deep, but boy, they are really good at playing press coverage and forcing inside to help to their safety. So it's not an area where you just line up and beat them, but I do think you can get some big plays if you can get off press coverage, and you can protect well enough to allow those routes to develop. We can talk about beating guys deep, but that doesn't exist if you don't protect well enough, and that's often why they have so much success. The front makes the coverage more than the coverage makes the front in any type of defense. That's certainly the case in Auburn.
And let me just share something news here. Media observation period is just ending here in Tuscaloosa.
Okay.
Linebackers Terrell Lewis, Christian Miller, and Mac Wilson were at practice today participating. They were wearing a black no-contact jersey, which is, not that much. But this is something that we've been hearing for a couple of days, and I didn't really want to talk about it, but Mac Wilson, that's a little bit of a shock. And how big would that be if he's back out on the football field there for the Crimson Tide?
Well, it's big. I don't know, and I kind of figured early in the week I kind of had the impression that they were going to at least get him out there and see. Now, unless something has happened in the last couple of hours, I don't know that they've been obviously medically cleared to participate with the black jersey, which is, for people, I'm sure you've gone over that's the red jersey for most people. I don't think they've been cleared to play, and so I think that will probably come down, or we may have a better feel for that on Friday. Obviously, the good thing is to get rehab. They'll get some rehab tomorrow in and around Thanksgiving, and then Friday too. And we'll see. Do I expect a lot of snaps? No, but if they can give them something, it'll be interesting. But at this point, you're preparing to play without them, and if you can get something out of them in the game, that's obviously gravy.
We're talking to Chris Landry, and Chris, I want to continue to go back here for just a couple of minutes. When you look at New England's system, which I know that you know a lot about because you've worked under Bill Belichick, I want to ask you, because what they do as well as anybody is attack. They find the weakness. You've talked about that before. Their game plans are different based on who they're playing. When you look at Brian Daboll, how will he slow that aggressive front that they've got down at Auburn down? I mean, is there ways that you think you see this Alabama potentially slowing that front down?
I think what you have to do is against really good pass rush fronts, which this team is, you've got to make them respect the run. So that does not mean that you line up and run it in a brick wall. You have to find a way to run the football. So how do you do that if you're not having success and you're having trouble blocking, and particularly against numbers? How do you run the football? Well, there are a couple of things you can do. You can move the pocket a little bit, and with an athletic quarterback, that's one of the options. Two, I think you can work the screen game a little bit. You want to attack them. There are two ways. The wide screen to the receivers, and I think out of bunch sets is the best way to go, because as they play press coverage, it reduces their effectiveness to press receivers off the line of scrimmage. So it gives you some ability to make some plays and have to have them defend that. The ball comes out quickly, so they're not able to get pressure because the ball's coming out so quickly. Then the other thing I think you can do is the middle screens to the backs. I think that's what the definition of screens are, is you allow that pressure to come up and you dump it just over that pressure. Those are some things that you can do to mitigate some of the pressure and allow you to be able to run the football some. If you can throw the football and you can attack with the short passing game, then obviously that's an extension of the running game. then it allows you to be able to have some balance and to be able to come back with the run, and then you're able to also dictate with the pass game. You start to – the key is you want to be able to try to make defenses do two things. You defend the entire field, and then obviously you want to attack them by aggressively going at their weakness. So if they're going to overplay the run, you attack with the passing game. And I think this is a type of game that Calvin Ridley, for example, on the slant routes could have a big day if Alabama can work the perimeter passing game, work the screen game, get the running game going. That's going to bring a safety cheating up a little bit, and then now you got the middle of the field open, and the ability to be able to hit him on the slant is, a lot of big play potential because his run after catch ability is huge. And I think the other receivers too, but I think he's the guy that can kind of really cause a lot of problems off the line of scrimmage, and I think they will design some things for Ridley. That's a big part of what they try to do. It's quite frankly what they've done even under Lane's system and under Brian's system. They will design plays to get a player the ball, and whether you can go back to whether it's Amari Cooper to now with Calvin Ridley, every one of those great go-to guys, they'll design ways to get them open, and then the quarterback just has to look for that guy. And then, the great thing about having an athletic quarterback, if the play's not there, then he can just tuck and run, as opposed to a pocket quarterback that if the play's not there, you got to eat it or throw it away.
When you look at Kerryon Johnson right now, when we talk about rushes, they've really relied on him heavily. I mean, when you look at number of carries, he's up there when you talk about it at his weight. He's only 210 pounds. And when you begin to look at the numbers, you think that's a factor going into the month of November, going against probably the toughest challenge, if not the toughest challenge that he'll face all year?
Well, I think he's an outstanding back. I think he runs powerful. I think he runs with balance under his pads. I think that he hits the hole very hard and with a lot of forward lean, and he explodes through the hole. I think he's a great back. I think that it's a huge factor for them. They don't have the depth that Bama has at running back, or even some teams that I've seen that has a multitude of guys. He's their guy. I mean, he's the guy that kind of stirs the drink for their offense. If they get that running game going, particularly when they can get a little bit of a tempo going, and that's what I think they're going to do. That you're going to see them ratchet up the tempo a little bit, try to get to the line of scrimmage quickly, and try to gash them. That's what they try to do. The downhill run game, the run series, is very effective, and they give a little crease, and they allow him to create and make plays, get him through the gap, and then make somebody miss on the second level, and he does that very, very, very well. I think he's a very, very good running back.
How do you think Alabama can help this offensive line out? I'm talking about the one in Tuscaloosa that has struggled some in pass pro.
Well, I think that, the thing you can do by design is kind of what I've mentioned, get the ball out quickly. So I think that, one of the things you try to do is you try to get the quarterback moved out of the pocket a little bit, some boots, some waggles, some half rolls, some half field reads. Get the ball out quickly. That'll allow and slow some pressure down. It'll get the defense respecting the fact that, hey, well, hold on. We can't tee off and attack the pocket now. We've got to set the edge, make sure that the quarterback doesn't get wide. We've got to make sure that they don't come back and hit us with the run, and that slows down the defense a little bit to hesitate just a half second before rushing the passer, and that's enough to get the ball out on time. So I think you can do some things by design to help your line out. Now, the other thing is, I think what you can do is when you've got some injuries at guard, it's a little bit better because you can help the guard out. You can down block and basically have the quarterback in a design rollout, roll away from where the pressure is going to be. In essence, you're going to let somebody go unblocked, but it's going to be the furthest guy away from the quarterback, so you can help the guy in the interior to protect the A-gap. You don't want pressure up the A-gap. That's the worst type of pressure. It's right in your face. Then you're running backwards before you have to run wide. and you increase the pursuit angles of the defense. So I think you can do some things to down block and angle block with guys alongside to protect the A-gap, and I think you can move the pocket. Those two things, I think, schematically are things you can work around a little bit to try to help, but it really comes down to you got to make them pay. And you've got to be able to get the ball out quickly and make plays in space, and that's going to be pivotal for to sustain drives, one, and to make some big plays, which I'm very curious to see how many big plays we're going to have in this game.
We're talking to Chris Landry. It is the LandryFootball.com report that you hear football views from a coach, a scout, and administrator. I'd love to ask you what you think is going to happen down at the Iron Bowl. You think Alabama's going to be able to pull this out, or do you like the Auburn Tigers to win it?
Well, the thing about it is, if I was looking at these two teams, which you can't do it this way, but if I was just looking at it as Team A and Team B, and there's a lot to like about this Auburn team. They're healthier. They're playing very well. Maybe to some degree Alabama's a little vulnerable. And absolutely would not surprise me if Auburn was able to win it. However, what makes it really difficult is you do know that you've got one team that has been in this position, big games, that is, time and time again. I think that is significant. I also think Jalen Hurts is significant in that he has the ability to kind of erase some bad plays and some of the things that we talked about, some of the vulnerabilities up front. I think he can create some positive plays out of negative situations. I think the ability to have a little bit of time to be able to adjust some things defensively might be enough. In essence, I just trust Alabama's preparation and their team more than I do Auburn. I have said all year long, not in the early part of the season when the Auburn's offense was struggling, but you've heard me say it on this show, and much to my surprise that they had the brain freeze against LSU, but I thought Auburn was one of the top 5 teams in the country most of the year once they got kind of past that Mercer, Missouri, and the offense started to get better. I really thought this defense was one of the best in the country, and I legitimately thought they were one of that, along with Georgia and and Alabama. I thought they were one of the 5 best teams. So I thought they were for real, but there've been times, and mainly that LSU game comes to mind, where they haven't looked that way. So I just trust Alabama to play their best game or to play their very best, whatever that capability is, more than I do Auburn. But, if Auburn plays the best game, they've got a good shot. In essence, I would favor in a close game, maybe a 3-point type of game, Alabama because of those reasons that I mentioned, the experience, and Jalen Hurts probably making a play late that might be the difference.
I mean, here, I'm going to give you a stat. You always talk and give us some insight with Nick Saban. I just think he's a big game coach. When you talk about more victories against top 5 teams, and Auburn's right outside the top 5, but I kind of put them in that category. We talk about 19 career victories over top 5 teams. That's more than Barry Switzer, Bobby Bowden, Woody Hayes, Steve Spurrier, Coach Bryant, Lou Holtz. Nick Saban is a gamer in these big moments.
Well, you don't win the championships he's won without doing that. I mean, you have to win big games to get into big games, and so he's consistently done it, and that's why it's hard for me. For me, I look at it, and I know that this is going to be a really good game, and Auburn's very capable. But I'm a little bit of a prove it to me person. I got to kind of see it. I'm not going to be surprised, all that surprised, but I need to see Alabama get beat before I truly believe it. You know what I mean? And
sure.
I think Auburn's capable, but push comes to shove, if I had to pick, I would go in and say, give me Alabama in a close one, that they will find a way likely to win this.
I know I harp on this all the time, but Alabama's lost 7 starters at some point during this season. If you want to add all that up, I think it's 33 starts that they've missed. 7 different players. But let me read you the categories here. When we talk about Alabama's defense, they rank in the top 10 in every significant defensive category. Scoring defense, total defense, passing efficiency, second in rushing defense, third in pass yards allowed, fourth in first downs allowed. Alabama's 11 red zone touchdowns allowed, and the second fewest in FBS this season behind TCU. When you think about all the injuries that they've lost, when we talk about the starts and the 7 different players and all the linebackers, this may be Nick Saban's best coaching job.
Well, listen, if they were completely healthy, then I think we would have spent a lot of time just talking about, something else, because I think this is an Alabama team that's, when all hands are on deck, and most people are not at this stage, but they've been hit with a bunch of injuries. All hands on deck, this is, I think, a considerably better Alabama team in terms of their ability to be able to win. I mean, how's Auburn going to run the football well enough against this Alabama defense would be the conversation I would be having and discussing, and I, would have discussed that 5 or 6 or 7 weeks ago. We're in a little different situation. So this is about being able to muster up everything you can, and it's putting a lot on, I think, the offense to make plays, putting a lot on the quarterback. It's putting a lot on Nick and his defensive staff to cover up some of the problems that they have. And, yeah, the depth is an issue. Yes, they've got a bunch of 5 stars. You don't just replace guys that have stars by their name that are very good, that haven't had enough time in the system to be that effective, and just plug in there at a moment's notice. I do think that having time to get them extra work as opposed to replacing in-game injuries are a different scenario. But, listen, I think this Alabama team under normal circumstances, I've said it, I don't think anybody's going to beat Alabama this year. I said that a few weeks ago. Well, I'm not backing off of it, but I clearly tell you that they're more vulnerable now than they've ever been because of the injuries. With that said, I still like their chances. This may be as tough a team that they would play in terms of they're very much, like Clemson in terms of defensive talent. If you're just looking at the top teams out, Miami's got a lot of speed. But, really, this Auburn team is as good a team as Alabama will play all year long, including if they win it and play Georgia and go to the playoffs. I think this is that tough of a game, and you got to play it on the road. We all know that's a challenge in its own right.
Hey, Chris, your big take on this coaching carousel that's happening right now. It's even hard to keep up with what's a rumor and what's the truth. Any analysis on this?
Well, I do think that know Chip Kelly pretty well. I do know that he's very intrigued by Florida. I think that, UCLA's come at him with a pretty nice offer. It's a different situation over there, but their big booster, Casey Wasserman, has made a commitment to put, a lot into that football program that heretofore UCLA's not done, traditionally. I would probably give a slight edge to Florida. That's a guess at this point. I'm not reporting that anything's done or anything, but I think that would be a possibility. I think that would be where I would anticipate him going. And I think we'll know something pretty soon, like maybe the early part of next week at the latest, if not before. I think if Tennessee's willing to put the money, and by that I mean for assistance, for support staff, I think they can get Dan Mullen, and I think he'll leave. If they're not going to do that, well then he's not going to leave Starkville to go and get basically the same job at a different location with greater, national history and pedigree and conference history and pedigree. That's not going to be enough in this day and age. So I think Tennessee's very interesting to see how that may play out, because I think they're going to make a push for Dan as soon as Saturday, because the Egg Bowl is, Friday, because the Egg Bowl is, I'm all confused in the days. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving.
Me too. I'm same way.
They play tomorrow. It's the Thursday. I think they're going to be in play and try to talk to Dan as early as Friday, and we might see something there. Whether that's going to be a go or not. If those things happen, then we'll see. I think we're going to see a move being made at Texas A&M. I do think there is some legitimate interest. I know Scott Woodard very well. He was the right-hand man to Mark Emmert at LSU back when they hired Nick Saban, and he knows that group. He knows Jimbo Fisher well. I know there's some contact and some interest there. A&M is not one traditionally, but they've got a lot of money. That hasn't made a whole lot of difference in the past because they haven't hired right. But I think that's going to get a lot of people interested. I think Jimbo is, if not the first calls, one of the first calls. So we could see an interesting domino effect with potentially people moving. I can tell you that if Alabama beats Auburn, we could see something within the next, 72 hours after that. I do believe that there is a strong chance that Gus Malzahn will leave Auburn for Arkansas. I think the fact that he's always one loss away from being on the hot seat there, that is a possibility. Nebraska will have an opening probably as early as Friday morning. They play Friday, so that'll be Saturday morning. So I think we're going to see a lot happening, and we could see some extra movement if a Jimbo Fisher were to leave, or a Dan Mullen were to leave, or a Gus Malzahn were to leave. And I think that Jimbo Fisher would be in play at Auburn if Gus leaves. So I think there's going to be some interesting dynamics in the next week to 10 days that are going to, a lot of movement that we'll be having a lot to talk about. And some of it's just not going to happen like we think. It's just the way it is. But we're going to have a lot of things in play. And it's going to be flying. Trust me, with the agents trying to get deals done, and a lot of sorting through a lot of the rumors versus fact is going to be challenging.
It's a great website, LandryFootball.com. If you're that college football fan that wants to dive a little bit deeper, the podcast available each Tuesday, each Thursday, like Chip Kelly's future. The job of an offensive coordinator was top-notch. Inside the coaching searches at Florida, Tennessee, you can find all that available. Also, you got to go check out the Alabama film review, Alabama getting healthy ahead of the Iron Bowl, and you can find that LandryFootball.com. Hey, Chris, as we open up the thing, happy Thanksgiving. I appreciate you for being a part of the show, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll look forward to the conversation next Wednesday.
Thank you. I'm thankful for you as well and all your fine listeners. Blessed Thanksgiving to everyone. Enjoy the Iron Bowl. It should be a classic.